Hello, fellow geeks out there. It's that time again to listen to a podcast from the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 221 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo, and joining me today, as usual, is the Comic Concierge. Hello, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going well. We have made it to something that we, for a while, thought we might not get to. I don't know. We just kept extending this Hitchcock series, but we're finally at a point where we're going to put the bow on it. We're going to do a Hitchcock wrap party here today. So we're going to be celebrating everything that we have watched over the last 15 films that we've covered on here, which has been a long time. A majority of the year we've spent talking about Hitchcock films, and now we're going to wrap it up by ranking our top films. We're going to talk about some awards, maybe for some performances, and then some fun awards along the way. Before we get into all the specifics of that, Dan, I know we'll talk about this a little bit probably at the end, but what has this 15 film journey been like for you?
It's honestly been a joy. Like going into this year, I mentioned I haven't watched movies nearly as much as I did, and for a lot of reasons, I've been able to get really back into films. And a big reason was doing this retrospective because it really just reminded me of why I love movies as much as I have throughout my life. And just getting back into the mold of old school Hollywood, like these type of films, rewatching some movies that we've talked about that I loved that don't spend nearly enough time doing. And it was just interesting seeing some big films I have yet to see for the first time. It was overall just a really good experience to go through these films and just see the evolution of the career of someone like Hitchcock, but also some really big stars that is also inspiring what we're doing next. So overall, good time. How about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed myself almost even more than I anticipated. I kind of came into most of this thing blind, and I wanted to do it because I knew Hitchcock was a major blind spot for me, or the majority of his filmography was. So I definitely wanted to catch up on these, but I had no inclination on if I would like a majority of the films, love a majority of the films, dislike a majority of the films. I had seen, and I'll ask you this same question in a second because some of these were rewatches and some of these were first time watches. You had seen a few more than I had, but I had only seen two of these films going into this retrospective, and I was positive on one, and I'll say lukewarm on the other. So it wasn't like I had seen 3 or 4 Hitchcock films and loved them all and just knew that I was going to have a romping good time with this. It was a complete, we'll roll the dice and see how this goes. But like you said, it introduced me to the first time I've seen a few of these actors and actresses perform, and a couple of the other ones I had seen perform before, but not extensively. So it was a great to see some of these old school Hollywood stars and kind of figure out why they were the stars that they were. And I had a lot of fun with this. Obviously, we both had to have been having fun, or we would not have extended the filmography from 10 films to 15 films. What did you think as far as, so 2 questions for you. Number one, how many of these were first time watches versus rewatches for you? And then the other thing that I was curious about, what did you feel like with the addition of those final 5 films? How did those play a part in all of this? Were you happy that we added those additional films, and kind of what was your take on that?
I watched 6 of the films that we went through before: Rear Window, North by Northwest, Psycho, Lifeboat, Dial M for Murder, and Strangers on a Train. All of which, though, it was probably been a decade since I saw, so it's been quite a while since I watched those. And I'm definitely glad we added some of the ones we went through, like Lifeboat. I thought, which one I saw before, but I was glad to watch again. To Catch a Thief, the one we just recently we ended it with. I was really happy to watch kind of all the ones we added, and it just, I think too, some of those gave a different side of Hitchcock we didn't really touch upon, or something like Lifeboat. I thought was another good example of him doing a really isolated storyline again. So, how about yourself?
Yeah, I was happy, and it's kind of interesting. Out of those 5 that we added, because we're gonna break this up throughout this record, guys. We're gonna keep the suspense rolling. So at one point, we're gonna give you our 15 through 11 films, and then the middle 5, and then the top 5. And honestly, there's a film of the last 5 that we covered that fits into each of those groups for me. So I feel like it was good to see that, and I agree. Like, there's a lot that you can see connections with those first 10. es- I think there's a handful that you really kind of felt like you were watching Hitchcock movies, and I think that last five had a little of that for sure. But I think it also sprinkled in some other sides, like you said, of Hitchcock, which makes you kind of appreciate him more as an overall director and kind of all the different things that he had like in his tool bag, I guess you could say. So I was happy that we added those. I mean, we could have gone on and on. I mean, I think he has what 50 plus films, 53, 54, 55, somewhere in there. But I think we found a good spot to kind of end at. Like, if you're enjoying these 15 that you've watched with us, obviously there's a bunch more you can check out. But I think we hit most of the ones that I don't know. I don't if you could call it like the essential films to watch for Hitchcock. We had to have hit a majority of those, so I'm kind of happy with that. So the way we're going to do is we're going to break this up a little bit. We're going to do some, like I said, our bottom five, middle five, and top five sprinkled in. But then surrounding those different reveals, we're also going to talk about some acting that we liked from an actor, actress, supporting roles, and then just some fun stuff that we thought were things that we should highlight when it comes to Hitchcock. And then we'll kind of end it with some final closing thoughts on. We've talked a lot throughout this whole filmography look at different things that are quote unquote Hitchcockian or aspects that people say are kind of trademarks of his. We're not going to necessarily touch on all of those because we've spent time and a lot of time throughout the reviews talking about that. But I thought it would be fun if we talked about what we feel like represents Hitchcock overall and what we think his in our mind what are like the things that stood out to us as far as his filmmaking goes, and we'll talk about that at the end. So we're going to kick it off here with a we'll go right into acting awards here. We're going to talk about the best supporting actor. And as we do these different awards, just as a heads up, some of us, we may only have one award. We may have a top two, top three, or whatever. So we'll just kind of play by ear. There's not like a set number that we decided upon. So when it comes to supporting actors, and the reason I really wanted to put supporting actors and supporting actresses in here is because I think, especially in the first half of this filmography, we had a lot to comment on the supporting characters that Hitchcock had in his films and how that kind of helped us probably elevate a few of those early films because of that supporting cast. So I thought it'd be fitting that we talk about a few of those in this wrap up party. So, Dan, why don't you start with this one? What stood out for you as far as best supporting actor roles throughout the 15 films?
So one thing I struggled with was trying to figure out like I, I feel like I do this with a lot. Like, is this a supporting or a leading role? Because there's a lot of
Very
ones where
hard.
like a kind of in between, especially the ensemble films that are not really like one part more than another. So I try to just figure one. It's is this a so that was the first challenge.
Yeah.
So, but I narrowed it down, and I think one aspect of Hitchcock, of course, is that he's created a lot of iconic villains throughout his time. With the help of actors, of course. And there's a lot of great ones to choose from. But the one I went with, like the one that stood out the most to me, I went with Robert Walker as Bruno Anthony in Strangers on a Train. And I guess you could also argue maybe he's the co-lead. I figure since he's not in the majority of the film, I'm considering him
I
supporting.
think you're good.
Yeah, and I love this character so much, and you see a lot, I think, of with this character, things that would be seen in future Hitchcock films. I think there's a lot of Norman Bates in this character, but I love the way Robert Walker plays this character. He's very flamboyant. He is charming, but also kind of creepy. He brings a lot of life to the character, and like his scenes are always captivating. But also there's always something there that like this person is just not quite there, and when he kind of goes full psychotic, you certainly understand that. And there's just this like element of true evil to his character, just the way he is so addicted to murder, and like how he approaches it in such a brash way. Like he has a very macabre sense of humor, and I found him such a fascinating figure throughout the entire film, and a big reason why I enjoy that movie as much as I did. So I think I thought about going with Norman Bates as well. I think certainly that performance, but I also didn't know. It's like, is that leading though? I don't know, but
Right.
I really felt like this was a performance that was truly ahead of its time in a lot of ways. So that's why I went with him. Another one that also was like thinking about and close behind was Grace Kelly in Rear Window. She's again very captivating. Plus, I think she just works so well as uh, working off Jimmy Stewart in that film. I think she brings where he's more down in the dumps. You kind of see this his I don't know depression, but his obsession. But seeing her and like seeing their relationship, every time she was on screen, it was such a delightful moment, and but also like seeing her take charge in certain instances, seeing like when you see her being uh, scared or being frightened of the moment, it really amps up the tell. She just basically could do it all. It's just also effortless as well.
Mhm.
So those were to me two of the best supporting characters that we in performances we saw throughout this
Yeah,
overall
it
retrospective.
makes me think too. Like I was trying to take notes as we went through each film with this in mind because I knew we were going to do some type of wrap up, even though we hadn't necessarily solidified what the categories may be or different things like that because we wanted to have a more of a feel for the overall filmography as we kind of shape that. But I was trying to take notes throughout this, and it makes me think like I need to take better notes because although I did take them, and I'm happy that I did, I completely spaced on uh not space, but I guess passed over the guy on Strangers on the Train, and you're right, he makes a perfect supporting role performance there, and he was ahead of his time, and he is what makes that movie what it is. So I feel like I should have had him on my list. I have a couple on my list that are probably more legit like supporting roles, and then I wanted to bring up a couple that probably wouldn't qualify necessarily, I don't think, as supporting roles because their roles were not large enough. But I think I wanted to bring them in here because for me, it highlights Hitchcock's attention to even guest or like, I guess not guest, but like very small roles, like bit roles or very small performances. And I think he did that really well. So I guess my quote unquote serious supporting actors, I did go with a villain as well as one of them, and these are in no particular order, but I did think Claude Rains as Alexander Sebastian in Notorious, who is the villain, I guess you can say, quote unquote, in that movie. He's the main guy that is in charge of living at the guy in the house that's, I guess you could
Yeah,
say, in
yeah.
charge of this sect of whatever. I mean, there's different people that you don't really get a total feeling of like what the hierarchy is and who's got what power, but he comes across as the main bad guy, and I thought that was a role that really worked in that film, to kind of set the stage for some of the tension with the almost like a love triangle esque aspect between Cary Grant and oh god, now I'm blanking on the name,
Ingmar,
Ingrid Bergman.
Ingmar Bergman. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ingrid Bergman, and then Claude Rains, and I thought it was very cool how those three kind of played off each other. So I definitely was a fan of his performance in Notorious. And on the opposite side, I guess a quote unquote almost like a hero character, I guess, in this film. But I thought Robert Cummings as Mark Halliday in Dial M for Murder, who plays like the guy that's on her side. Granted, he may not be like a, I don't know, she's married and he, he he's obviously interested and things like that. But I just kind of liked how that performance went, and it was
Mhm.
somewhat subtle or subdued, but like still adding to the story overall. And I kind of liked his interaction there in that film with um, God, why am I forgetting everybody that's in every movie? That's Grace Kelly as well,
Grace
right?
Kelly. Grace Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you're here, Dan. I have all these names written down, but I didn't write the whole cast down. So I really like those two roles. And then just from a fun standpoint, I wanted to highlight a couple. I think Nigel Bruce as Beaky in Suspicion is a lot of fun because it adds to the fact that you're already questioning Cary Grant's character in Suspicion, but up
Yeah.
to that point, you're really just getting the two of them interacting, Cary Grant and then the female lead, and then Beaky comes in, and it's like it kind of subverts some of the stuff you're thinking, and almost makes you want to believe him even more. But then he's also not 100% like he's his friend, but he's not afraid to like throw him under the bus. So I don't know. I thought he added some good comedy as well,
Mhm.
to Suspicion. And then because I like, there's a lot to talk about. I'm sorry. I'm gonna like
Oh, go.
go on and on about some of these, but from a fun standpoint, I really liked Henry Travers and Hume Cronin as the father and Herbie in Shadow of a Doubt. the two guys that are like telling stories about
Oh yes, yes,
how to
they're a good
kill each
time.
other and all that kind of stuff. It just added an element that was very much needed in that movie, I felt. And then again, I don't know which one of these are lead or supporting, but I thought William Bendix and Walter Slezak as Gus and Captain Willie in Lifeboat, maybe that's considered a lead role. I don't know. It's hard. There's 9 of them, so they're all
Yeah,
supporting
yeah.
to me. So, but I did think that those 2 were standout characters that I kind of wanted to highlight as well. So, those were some of my choices. Any thoughts on any of those guys?
Those are I do love the call out of the father and his friend in Shadow of Doubt. They were a good time, and I actually forgot because I forgot since we're doing actress as well. I also had Tallulah Bankard as one of my best supporting actresses as well, because I think one like her presence makes that film. She's like the first person you see, and she can really do it all. She adds a lot of levity, when she's more concerned about uh, her typewriter more so than her, like she's more concerned about getting the story than being the story. But also when you see that bravado kind of wane, the seriousness of the situation starts to really pick up, and then also her relationship. So I thought she was a big reason why the film worked. So I had her as one of my favorite performances. But the ones that you mentioned too, the Gus, he is the heart of that movie. Like
Mhm.
him, like his plight. Like I think they do a really good job of really making you care about that character, and then everything he goes through, and like his death. Like if we, I know we don't have the saddest moments, but if we did, like
Yeah.
that would certainly be it's like he just wanted to dance. He just wanted
That
to
movie
dance
has a
with his
couple of
girlfriend.
them that would qualify.
Yeah. So, yeah, because yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, good calls out there.
Awesome. Absolutely. So that's some of our favorite supporting roles. I actually do have some females that I'll talk about a little bit later that I forgot to lump in there, so I'll throw those in later. But as far as one thing that we kind of noted that was that Hitchcock is attributed to is interesting mom characters in his films. So I thought it would be fun to just highlight either one or 2 of your favorite mom performances. So I'm gonna go first because to me, I guess you have to give it to this person because she played moms twice. So Jessie Royce Landis plays Clara Thornhill in North by Northwest, Cary Grant's character's mother, and then she plays the other role, Grace Kelly's mom, in To Catch a Thief. And I'm just going to give her credit for that because she played 2 different moms, and I thought both of them were interesting in a way, especially the one in North by Northwest, probably. But I don't know how
Yeah.
many moms she played in her filmography, but she had a knack for it. So I'll give some credit to her for that.
Yeah. She's very likable. I mean, she almost has this like panache, like sense when you look at her, but then her performances are very different, especially the way like she would stand up for her son and things like that. So I think she had a lot of comedy. I'm gonna go with a different mom. I'm gonna go with Patricia Collinges in Shadow of a Doubt. For one, I think her character is really important because a lot of that movie is seeing like your standard typical suburban family juxtaposed with this, killer, and she, seeing her kind of just almost being aloof, but also like I think she does a lot, has a really good performance in the way that she undercuts Uncle Charlie in certain ways. Like there's this one scene where Charlie's going off about like his mantra of life and how he's all about today, and that's what he is really focused on. He's like, well, if you're all about today, make sure to eat your breakfast, and like just like because he has this hatred in him, but she just sees this broken child, and I like the way she almost defangs him without even realizing what she's doing, but also the way she supports her her daughter, and her family unit altogether. I just thought she was a good representation of a different type of mom that we didn't really get, but I thought her performance and the purpose of that character really stood out to me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just crazy the amount of different mom portrayals in this filmography because you also had like the one she wasn't really a mom, so to speak, but the character in the beginning of Rebecca, who's kind of
Yeah.
acting like a mom. You have
Oh,
the
she was so
um,
bad.
you have
Yeah.
the mom from Birds, obviously was involved there. I thought she was a little bit maybe too over the top for me, I guess, as a person.
Yeah.
And then you had the evil mom, right, from Notorious, the Claude Rains's mom in that film that was helping with the bad guys, I guess you could call it. That was a mom, right?
Yeah,
One of them,
I would think so.
Sebastian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different moms, and it's kind of interesting how we go through that. So I did have a couple supporting actresses that I just wanted to throw out there. I'll just talk about two. Number one, I would put Thelma Ritter as Stella in Rear Window. I thought that character was fun as far as what she added from just kind of like an outsider's perspective. Like
Yeah.
she sees what he's doing the whole time and she's adding it, but you get to see like that moment. It's the same with Grace Kelly's character, right? When you see Grace Kelly become part
Mhm.
of the thing, but you also get to see it almost simultaneously when Stella starts joining in, and it's just like a genius part of that film when you get like everybody who's at one point kind of arm's length away from Jimmy Stewart's character, and then they get sucked in, and they're like, "Well, I'm into this story now." It's like watching a bad reality show or something, right? Like
Yeah.
you're like, "Why am I watching
Yeah.
this?" And all of a sudden, you're like 17 episodes in. You're like, "What happened?" So I just wanted to throw out those guys' names as well. So, all right, let's get into. Did you have any other supporting roles or anything else on Moms you wanted to talk about before we reveal our
uh,
15 through 11?
I guess I'll give Grace Kelly another shout out for her work in To Catch a Thief. I thought she was quite good in that. We talked about that last week, so I don't have to go in great detail. But I thought the way she was able to kind of go tit for tat with Cary Grant and kind of be ahead of where he thought she was, and kind of didn't really fall for his game, and she does that role really well. So
Yeah,
uh,
I agree. All right, so that means we're going to start to reveal our bottom third here, I guess you could call it. Remember that he's made like 50 plus films. We probably watched 15 of the better ones. So this isn't like it's not like these are all one-star films necessarily, but we're going to
yeah.
be revealing our 15 through 11, and I'm sure, with some of yours these may have a decent amount of stars. I'm probably going to get this may be a point where some people are going to stop listening to us because I probably am going to have one in our bottom 5 that nobody is going to appreciate. But we can go through here. So I'll go through my 15 through 11, and then you can talk about your 15 through 11. We'll just kind of name them off and then react
Okay.
afterwards. So for my number 15, I have Rope. Number 14, I have The Birds. 13, I have Shadow of a Doubt. 12, I have Suspicion. And it was really hard. 9 through 11 were really hard for me, but I'm actually going to go with number 11 as Vertigo, and that's when people are going to stop listening. So, what are your 15 through 11, Dan?
Actually, our 15 through 11 are not that different. 15 and 14 are the same. I have Rope as well. Again, I don't think any of these, I would not give any of these like a negative review, but if you're
Right.
wondering, bigger thoughts on these or more in depth thoughts, you can check out the episodes. But 15 was Rope. 14, I also have The Birds. Uh, 13, I have the 39 Steps. Good movie. I think that's where you certainly see like Hitchcock coming into his own. It was like a good rookie season that was bound for, even though it was like his 80th movie. But like it certainly was the first one I think that really showcased his talents on a major level. And then Shadow of a Doubt, I have at 12. Like honestly, like from 13 to like 7 are really interchangeable for me. But I
Yeah.
have Shadow of the Doubt there, and then at 11, I have Suspicion, and that's been all over the board for me. When I first did this, it was higher than lower, but that's where I sit right now. Rope, The Birds, 39 Steps, Shadow of a Doubt at 12, and then Suspicion at 11.
So that's interesting. We do have 4 of the same in that 5. So the only ones we have different is I have Vertigo and you have the 39 Steps, but seems like we're somewhat in consensus on the other 4. So, like I said, I didn't really like Rope. Like that
Yeah,
was probably the one that I didn't like. Birds, I understand why, but it maybe not for me type deal. And then I go really back and forth on I think Suspicion is better than Shadow of a Doubt. Like I'm pretty confident in that as far as my taste.
yeah,
But I just thought there's so many that are really good that it's hard to put either of those films into that mix. But I think you're right. For me, I think it's probably 12 through 7 that I really have a hard time rearranging
yeah.
and figuring out what order they go in. So, any other overall thoughts on that set of 5, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, with Rope, like I thought like there was some technical genius in that film, but I was always so aware of its creation, like the the use of the long shot, and I just was never invested in it. Someone with the birds, I think, has some great spectacle, some amazing shots, which will actually I'll get to with some of the things we'll talk about. But I just felt it was a bit hollow. And then, like I mentioned, 39 Steps I think was good, but it wasn't quite there yet. And then Shadow of the Doubt, like I go back and forth with that. There's a lot I love about that movie. There's some really great dynamics in that, and same thing with Suspicion. I think I like Suspicion more than you do, but it's just it's just that third tier uh,
Right.
Hitchcock for me compared to some of the other films we'll get to.
Absolutely. All right, let's get back into some of the fun awards here. So Dan mentioned some good shots. So that's where we're going to next. The best shots that we saw across the 15 films. I have two or three that I'll mention, but Dan, I'll let you go first. What were some of the best shots in your mind?
So I'll get some love to the lowest movie on my list, which was Rope. But I do find the final shot of that to be one of the best shots of all the films we've done thus far. It's kind of just the simple shot of Jimmy Stewart looking throughout the city, and has one of my favorite parts of that movie, which was that crazy mat that they used as the
Yeah.
landscape. That I thought that was just a really good way of closing that film. I'm actually going to go back to Catch a Thief. Honestly, like my favorite thought shot, and there's so many iconic shots with Hitchcock, of course, so many that have been done again and talked about. But one that I felt like was quite good, but I didn't see as much conversation around, was with and to Catch a Thief, the fireworks scene that we talked about last week,
Yeah.
where you have Grace Kelly and you have oh my goodness, why did I forget
Cary
his name?
Grant. Cary Grant.
Cary Grant. You have Grace Kelly and Cary Grant in a room, and in the background we see literal fireworks going off, and they're going back and forth, and it's so brazen, it's so in your face, it's so over the top. But that's what I loved about it, because it was just like Hitchcock is, like I mentioned last week, like I'm Hitchcock, they are who they are, and this is going to work, and it did. And then another one we mentioned with Suspicion. I do
Mhm.
love the drink scene, where such a simple choice of having a little flashlight in the cup as he's going up. I just thought that really brought you into the mental state of a character in such a small but brilliant way. So those are some of my favorite shots of the retrospective.
Awesome. I have a little carryover or a little crossover with you there, but I'll talk about the other ones first. So I have three that I'll bring up, and the one I don't have a specific shot because to me it's hard to. I guess I could, but in Birds, there's so many shots where you get to see
Yeah.
a great number of birds assembled in different ways. I guess the one where they're outside the schoolhouse, where they continue to just like build and
Hmm.
there's more and more
Yeah.
of them, is probably one of the best shots. I mean, you could even say like the gas fire at the gas station could be
Yeah.
a decent shot from that overhead view. That's one thing that I do appreciate about the birds is there's a lot of shots or scenes that are interesting to look at from that standpoint. I thought in Strangers on a Train, I believe it is, the murder scene that we see through the eyeglasses.
Hmm.
I think I have the right film. Hopefully, I'm not misplacing that. But there's a murder scene that we basically get to see through a reflection on a pair of eyeglasses. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But my number one was one of the ones that you brought up too. I think that milk, the glass of milk glowing as we travel. I can't remember if it was up the stairs or down the stairs. I think it was up the stairs.
Up the stairs.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like you said. It's such a simple, subtle move, but it looked so effective in that film
Yeah.
that it really brought attention to the fact that like is this or is this not poison and different things of that nature. So I thought that was really well done as well. Any other shots that you want to bring up?
No, I think, and because I was really trying to separate like shots from like the more suspenseful moments. So,
Yes,
well,
hard.
I think we'll get into some there.
Yeah, totally agree. I agree. So next award we're going to do is we're going to do Best Actress. So this is just Best Actress. We'll have Best Actor coming up towards the end. So this is Best Actress, and again, don't fault us for not knowing the difference between lead and supporting roles because I don't know if anybody in the universe does. I don't. The Academy certainly doesn't because they seem to get it wrong from time to time as well. So I'll go first with this one. A couple that I just wanted to highlight as well. I think Kim Novak. as Madeline Elster in Vertigo, even though I'm not as high on that film as probably the rest of the universe is, I do think that her performance is amazing in the fact that she is basically playing 3 different parts in this film. She's
Yeah.
playing, someone that she's pretending to be, and then she has her real self, I guess, and then she has another person that she then pretends to be later. And I just thought it was very effortless the way that she pulled all of that off. And it was so effective in the third personality that she was playing that I honestly at first wasn't convinced if it was the same person or not. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
same.
wait a second, is this still the same actress or what is going on? I'm so confused. So I thought she was phenomenal. I will also highlight, I'll just call it my Grace Kelly Award. Again, I don't know if these are supporting roles or lead roles, but her roles in To Catch a Thief and Rear Window are to me sublime,
Yeah,
and especially To Catch a Thief. I think she's just on another level. Like she's good in Rear Window, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like she's teasing as to like
yeah.
what she what else she can do, and I think we get even a bigger glimpse of that in To Catch a Thief. And then my last one, and then I'll let you name some actresses, but my last one, I have to go with um, Joan Fontaine as Mrs. Winters in Rebecca. Um, I just think it's actually a tie. It's between her and Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers. Like, I don't know. I guess you could say Mrs. Danvers is more of a supporting role, and I guess that would potentially put Joan Fontaine as the main role. But I really like both of their performances. I think if you were trying to name like the most memorable characters, like Mrs. Danvers has to be in the conversation for a character that's not gonna like she's gonna stick with you. And like if you're trying to think, oh, what's a famous Hitchcock character? I think that one definitely stands out. So I think there's definitely some good performances there in Rebecca. What about you for some actress awards?
I'm gonna go back to Rebecca, like you mentioned, with Joan Fontaine. She was probably my favorite leading actress performance throughout. That movie is so dependent upon her, and she has to do so much, like in such a short period of time. You have to buy that she can fall in love, that she can go from this a bit of a meek person that is being controlled by this overbearing, you know, suitor or kind of pseudo mom, but then get the courage and then but just be overwhelmed by a memory. Like that's not easy to do. You're not playing off a person. You're playing off a memory. And certainly Hitchcock helps a great deal with his staging and the use of that home is a big part of that. But I think she's such a fascinating presence throughout. Why the movie works as well as it does. In a similar vein, um, Joe Fontaine in Suspicion, she is again similar, almost a similar role in a way, where she has to just you just see the concern and like again that movie's all dependent upon her as well, like her just
Mhm.
not believing and wondering what exactly is Cary Grant doing, like what is he, where is this milk poisonous, especially the ending of that. So those her overall work is, I think, were pretty stellar throughout.
Absolutely. Definitely agree with that. This next category is probably one of the ones that I was very interested in just because I thought a few of them really stuck out. And also interesting because this is something that Hitchcock sometimes I think gets more criticized for. I think at times people criticize Hitchcock for not necessarily knowing how to end his films. I've heard that from a few different things that I've both listened to in podcast form and read and things like that. But I feel like it's a mixed bag. I feel like yes, some of his endings are not the greatest. I thought there was some definitely dud endings out there, but then there was some that like really stood out for me. So I have three that I wanted to highlight. But what did you think as far as like best endings and how Hitchcock handled endings of films overall?
I do think if there is one consistent criticism or like one area where he suffers from the most or not his strongest, it is endings. I think that's honestly, although I feel like if you did a retrospective of almost any director, that's always a challenge. Endings are
Right.
always so much harder than beginnings. But there are some really good ones, and one that I'm going to go with, I think even me more mixed on it when we did the review of it. But as I sat on it and thought about it, I just actually really loved the choice. And it's again, and I gave some love to Rope, even though it was 15 on my list. I'm gonna give love to The Birds, even though it's 14 on my list. I do really love that ending where you
Hmm.
just they emerge from their home and there's just birds everywhere. And we don't get a lot of endings like that with Hitchcock. Usually they're straightforward, but here, it's not in a way almost not a satisfying ending. But I feel like it's the only way you could end that film. And it's
Hmm.
a bit brave at that time because not super common. A lot of his movies tend to be uh, more straightforward. It's movies of that time in general. So I like that decision, and just the imagery itself. I think is really compelling, and it just kind of burned into my brain. So that's the ending that stood out the most to me.
Awesome. I have a couple that I wanted to highlight. I'll have two that are just kind of, um, we'll call them 3 and 2, and then there's like a mile, and then there's my number one. Like I just really loved one of the endings. So I want to shout out to the ending of Psycho. I do think that one's a decent way to end it as we kind of
Yeah,
see him, in the jail cell, etc., and revealing some more inner workings of him. I like the ending of Rear Window in respect to the fact that it kind of resets our main two characters in Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. But, obviously now he's got the two broken legs, but she's still sitting there. And it's just kind of, I don't know. I found it satisfying that it was like she was still there. She was still not like submitting to like what he wanted, but like
yeah.
they can't deny that they are into each other. So I just thought it was kind of a clever way to end that one. But my favorite ending, and it's not even close, is the ending to Notorious. So
Mm,
there's some suspense that leads up to it, but basically you have Cary Grant taking the female lead. It's Ingrid Bergman, right? I'm gonna get it right eventually. Ingrid Bergman, and
yeah,
and he's, we're not sure how he's gonna get out of this situation, but what my favorite part of is that they, get down to this car, and then Claude Rains' character has to basically turn around as the car drives off, knowing that like it's probably not going to end well for him now either, and they just usher him back into the door and shut the door.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I just thought that was a perfect ending for that film. So like that one for me, it was my favorite ending out of the 15 films we saw.
Good call. That's really that's actually have as we move into actually we'll get into suspenseful moments, so that might come up again. So
Yeah, I totally understand why. So, all right, so that makes it time for our middle tier, our 10 through 6. I don't know which one I'm more interested in yours. Like it may be this set of 5 because it's going to obviously tell us what's going to be in the top 5, but not the order. But this is our 10 through 6. So, I went first with the 15 through 11. I'll go first again, I guess, with these, and then I'll let you lead off on the 5 through 1. Um, so my 10 through 6, and like I said, this was hard because for me 10 or 12 through 7 is really almost interchangeable. So my number 10 is Psycho. So if you didn't leave like lose all respect for me by putting Vertigo at number 11, then you can for me putting Psycho at number 10. I'm probably way higher than I should be on the 39 steps, but that's what I have at number 9. Maybe it was because it was the first film we watched and it just like really set a positive tone for me for the rest of the filmography and what we were covering. But I have a soft spot, I guess, for 39 steps. So I have that at number 9. I have To Catch a Thief at number 8, the last film that we watched with Cary Grant there. I have Strangers on a Train at number 7, and then I have Rebecca at number 6. What is your 10 through 6, Dan?
I think we have a little bit more variety, differencing here, but compared to the last one, but still some crossover. At 10, that's actually where I have To Catch a Thief. At 9, if they didn't leave when you brought it up, they might leave now. That's where I have Vertigo. At 8, I have Strangers on a Train. At 7, I have Dial M for Murder. And then at 6, I have Lifeboat. So,
Okay. Not a
so
couple crossovers there. We both have To Catch a Thief and Strangers on a Train here.
yes, yeah. To Catch a Thief has been all over my list, but I found that movie really enjoyable. It's entertaining. That's like I think we mentioned it last week. If that's like I think a great entry into the world of Hitchcock. I like Strangers on a Train a lot as well. obviously we're putting it, but to go with Vertigo, because obviously that's probably the one that people have as one of the greatest movies of all time, which I think is, you try not to think about that when you go into a movie, but it's hard not to. So it does set a certain level of expectations, and I think on a technical level, I think there's a lot to love with that film. But as we mentioned in the review, I felt the story, the thing I'm supposed to be invested in, that love story, I never fully bought it. And I think when you don't buy it as much as the film needs you to, it's not the experience that you're hoping for. So that's why I have it down at 9. I still think it's certainly influential and there's a lot to be impressed by. But when it comes to just the experience of watching a film, it wasn't. I had a lot of movies I ended up enjoying much more with this experience.
Yeah, I think the addition of the final 5 films that we watched helped me out a little bit because there was a while where I had, like, a 4 or 5 film chunk of films that I just could not decide the order of, and,
Yeah.
for some reason, watching those final 5 helped me separate them into a few different groups, I guess, so, but Strangers on a Train, was definitely in that mix where I was really having trouble separating it from a few of the other films on my list. Now, Rebecca for me is a solid, like, to me, that's number 6. I said 7 through 12 was kind of the ones that I was having trouble with in my final rankings, but
Yeah.
Rebecca's not part of that. Rebecca was solid number 6 for me. It was more the Strangers on a Train, To Catch a Thief, 39 Steps that I was having problems with, and then I guess Psycho and Vertigo for me, I just am not as big of a fan of those 2 films as the rest of the world, so, you can leave your comments at,
Yeah.
Optimus Solo and, reach out there as far as that goes, but interesting, so that means we're gonna have some crossover in our top 5, but we'll have to wait and see what the order is going to be. So, one thing that Hitchcock is definitely known for is his cameos, right? He appears in all of his different films. So I'm wondering, Dan, did you have a favorite 1 or 2 cameo appearances from the man himself, Alfred Hitchcock?
Yeah, I had to go with one where I'm just like, how are you going to do a cameo in this movie? Like, there's not a lot of room to play with. You can't just force yourself into the background. How are you going to do it? But he finds a way in Lifeboat, where his cameo is literally on a newspaper. Maybe that's a cop out, but I think that's just kind of funny. Like, how do you find a way of doing a classic cameo in this situation? And like dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, Alfred Hitchcock finds a way of putting his image on a newspaper, and there you go. That's his cameo. But that was. But if you were gonna go with like an actual one where he shows up in the movie, the next one would probably be To Catch a Thief, because maybe it's the most blatant, because it calls it out so much. It's almost like a Stan Lee cameo in the way it happens. But that's what I love about it. I think it just, that also goes in the tone of that movie as well. So those are my 2
Yeah.
favorites.
Yeah, I thought about the one, with him holding the bird cage or with him holding the deck of cards and things of that nature,
Yeah.
but to me, he's very clever with in Rope, I guess, in a way, but I'm with you. It's Lifeboat. Like, how do you do this? The only other thing I can think of is when the ship gets attacked right in the beginning, that he's
Yeah.
like just some random Navy person or whatever that's floating around in the water. But like, I think
Yeah.
the newspaper is just straight up genius. So I am in lockstep with you on this one. It's the Lifeboat cameo. That's the best one. All
Nice.
right.
Nice.
Go ahead.
I was
Oh,
also the only other one that also Rear Window, like finding that's not nice one when he's just in the room, but yeah, we're good to go.
yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, there's some interesting, and I was still shocked at the number of times I didn't catch it right away when we were watching, and I had
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
figure out where it was after the fact. Like, where was it? And then some of them, like you said, some of them it's really obvious, and you see it, and there's no way to avoid it. But there's other ones that I'm like, I don't remember where it was in this one. Anyways, let's get into some of I guess our last act scene category here. We're gonna have our best actor awards, and then we're gonna round out with our most suspenseful moments before we reveal our 5 through 1. So, best actor awards. Who stood out to you in this category, Dan, over the 15 films?
Well, I feel, knowing we're going to be moving into a Cary Grant retrospective after this, seems fitting that he would be one that stood out the most to me. And there's plenty to choose from, but I'm going to go with his performance at North by Northwest. Just the befuddlement, the physical toll too. He had to go with through that film as well. That's not an easy movie to do. Running away from airplanes, on top of Mount Rushmore, all of that, and like we mentioned, I think during that it was basically him doing his James Bond. but with his charm and everything. So that was the one performance I would go with. The other one that came to mind too was Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window. Similar to like with Rebecca, that movie's all on him, and he has
Yeah,
to do a lot with his body language and his eyes because that's all he has. That's all you have, and I think it's up there as perhaps the best performance of his entire career, which is saying a lot for someone that's the with the filmography of a Jimmy Stewart. So those are
yeah.
my top two.
I I agree. So even though I had Psycho at number 10, and I'm not 100% sure this is a lead role, but I do think Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates is somebody that
Yeah,
deserves a shout out. I know you talked about him
definitely.
a little bit in the supporting, and it could very well be that, but that's why I don't have him as number one because I wasn't sure if it was a lead or a supporting role. I also do think that Robert Donat as Richard Hannay in 39 Steps does a decent job of carrying that film
Yeah.
in a completely different way, I guess. But I'm gonna go completely unoriginal as well, and I'm just gonna say Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart. Like they're really good guys. Like
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, obviously in Rear Window, and then Cary Grant, take your pick. I loved him in Notorious, but he's on another level in North by Northwest. So that would probably be my favorite role that we watched over the 14 or the 15 films. So big Cary
Nice.
Grant fan after this, and that's probably why we're gonna talk about him a little bit more moving forward.
Yeah.
So, all right, Hitchcock is supposed to be the master of suspense, right? He's the suspense, the thriller genre is his. So it only makes sense for us to look at what were the most successful suspense or thrill moments throughout these 15 films. And this one I had a hard time narrowing down because unlike the endings, like he's not known for his endings, so it was fairly easy to pick out a few of the good ones.
Yeah.
He's known for his suspense, right? So like
Yeah.
coming up with just a handful of those is a little bit more challenging. So why don't you start us off with some of your favorite suspenseful moments?
Some of them we mentioned already, and I'll go with the descent down the staircase in Notorious. Like it's and the thing about it too, it's a very simple act. Like he's just walking down the stairs, but there's so much tension there because of what's happening and the way it's played and shot so well that was such a suspenseful moment. I mentioned with Vertigo, I don't love it as much as other people, but if you talk about suspense, you have to mention Vertigo. The ascent up the staircase is iconic, and I'm surprised that's the first time I've said that word so far in this podcast, but it's up there. It's huge. Birds has a lot of
Mhm.
you have like you mentioned with the scene at the gas station, but also the playground shot, like the birds
Yeah.
just quietly gathering like that is just full of suspense until they finally
Or the
attack.
ending, or the ending
Yeah,
of Bird, like you mentioned before.
and then with I didn't the apartment scene where finally they go into the apartment and see Jimmy Stewart just from afar having to hope that she gets out, and then finally the use of the camera at the end. I didn't include that in my best endings. I'm kind of saving it for it here, but that was also super suspenseful. Just that idea of like you're watching, you're seeing potential awfulness happening, and you're just helpless to do that, and you're really putting you into the seat of Jimmy Stewart in that sequence. So I had to mention Rear Window with that. So
Absolutely. There's so many good ones to choose from. So I had the Playground of Crows as well from the birds or whatever kind of birds those were. Definitely suspenseful there. I like you. I called it the staircase to freedom, but the notorious ascent down or descent down the
yeah,
staircase. But I also think there's a scene earlier in that film too that could work too with the wine cellar, and
yes, yeah,
they're scrambling to try to like get out of that situation. So I'm definitely with you on those. I had two other ones that we didn't mention yet in Dial M for Murder. The murder attempt gone wrong was
good
somewhat
call.
suspenseful to watch because you're like, what is happening? This is going
Yeah,
not how it should have been, and I don't know what's going to happen next. So it was more of a like the unknown. Like, is she going to survive this? How is she going to survive it? What's going to happen in this? So I appreciated that one. I think Rebecca, there's a scene with Mrs. Danvers and um, what's the lead? Joan Fontaine at the window, where you're not exactly like you feel like Mrs. Danvers could kill her right there, and instead she's
yeah,
just standing next to her and talking fear into her. I thought that was a somewhat of a suspenseful moment, but man, Rear Window has a few, like you said, iconic ones. And I think there's two that stand out the most for me, and you kind of alluded to them as well. I think the one is the shot where you see both windows across from the apartment, and you see Grace Kelly in the one in a precarious situation, and then you see Miss Lonely Hearts in the bottom window in the same shot,
Oh yes, yeah,
and it's like somebody needs to do something right now. And
yeah,
it was very
yeah,
suspenseful because you just felt like you wanted to jump out of the, into the TV screen and be like, you have to make a decision and you need to help the person that's about to die. like,
yeah,
so I thought that was great. And then I think when Lars actually enters the apartment, like you said, with Jimmy Stewart in there, and obviously we get the whole camera flashes and stuff like that. But I just think when he turns around and sees, like, it's before he actually enters, you see Jimmy Stewart panicking,
yeah,
and it's hard not to panic a little with him, right? Even if you've seen the movie before, you're like, this is uncomfortable. So yeah,
yeah.
Hitchcock is great with suspense. Any other thoughts as far as Hitchcock's use of suspense?
I mean, obviously, it's what he's known for. He's the king of it. Like, he set the stage for so many people. We can go on. I mean, didn't mention Psycho. Certainly, scenes in that. I did.
Yes.
So I think there's so many you can choose from, and you probably could do an entire retrospective just on those scenes and not get not get bored or not
I
run out
did
of
see
things.
some people talk about the carousel and Strangers on a Train, but I just had to leave that one off.
Yeah,
So
that's like my
bananas.
yeah that's like that was my one issue with that film. Talking about endings, I just thought it went like too big, too necessary. I mean,
Right.
knowing that guy was actually crawling underneath it, like in real life, that's suspense. Like, but that's has me worrying for him. But yeah, I just thought that was a little
Totally
unnecessary. But
agree. Totally agree. All right. So that leads us to our 5 through 1 films. We're gonna reveal our number fives through one, and then we'll talk a little bit about like our overall takeaways from Hitchcock as a director in the films that we've covered. So, Dan, I'll let you start this off. I'm interested to see what order these are going to be in, but what is your five through? Should we do one at a time or should we just do them all at once?
I say we just do them, keep it consistent. We'll do them all at
All right, go
once.
ahead for it.
So at five, I have Psycho. Just great combination of noir and horror and thriller all in one. Of course, I'll say iconic again, super iconic, of course. At four, I have Notorious. We talked about it a lot in this episode. At three, my to me, like four and five, like one, two, three are all 5-star films for me. Like legitimately, I would consider in the category of greatest of all time. I have three. North by Northwest, as mentioned, is basically the best James Bond movie that is not James Bond. Uh, just such a fun, thrilling time. It's amazing set pieces, so well made. Cary Grant's great. At number two, and this was the highest ranking first time watch for me, is Rebecca. I was just fascinated by this. Where we talk about a lot of shots and use of music and things like that. Rebecca really got me for the story, which that was I think what stood out for me as well. And it's a bit more subtle in its approach than some of the other Hitchcock films, so that's why. And just with great performances throughout. The use of that location is so great. And then of course at number one, that leaves Rear Window. Speaking of location, probably the greatest set ever created for a film is Rear Window.
Yeah.
What they did with that set, it's just great performances throughout. So many great characters, many of which don't speak a line, and many of which don't actually have a name. And I think it is so much in the zeitgeist. We've seen it copied from everything from The Simpsons to The Simpsons. But I love it. Legitimately, rewatching it again, it's making like, man, does this creep up into my top 10 films of all time, and it's close into that. So yeah, that's at my number one. So I have Psycho, Notorious, North by Northwest, then Rebecca, and then lastly at number one I have Rear Window.
All right. So, like I said, I really wanted to put my number six into the top five. So, I really wanted a top six to be separated. So, because if you remember, six was Rebecca for me. And it's really hard for me to distinguish between Rebecca and Lifeboat, which is my number five. Uh,
Nice.
those two are just like neck and neck for me. I may have to revisit Dial M for Murder because for a long time I couldn't. That was one of the ones that I couldn't separate between like Strangers on a Train, Dial In for Murder. I had the 39 Steps in there. I probably would have eventually put To Catch a Thief in that group that I just really couldn't distinguish. But for some reason, Dial In for Murder just creeps up into my number 4 spot. It
Nice.
stuck with me a little bit. And then my top 3, I have Notorious at number 3. This movie has stuck with me. Like the more I think about
Yeah.
Notorious, the more I like it. And I just think it was a very good early on showing that we were in for a treat with Hitchcock. It's like before he really started, like, I guess, making the movies that everybody talks about, like Notorious was there, and I think it deserves more love. And then I don't know, can you call this a 1A and a 1B? I I don't know. Like I have North by Northwest at 2 and Rear Window at 1. I think they're both phenomenal 5-star films that I can't find anything bad to say about either one. So, Rear Window, I gave the slight edge, just because I guess I like the limited set piece and like all the craziness that went into this and how he was able to add all of these side characters that just really worked. And like we talked about just before we revealed this, the amount of suspenseful moments. I don't know if there was ever a time where I more was wanting to try to like get involved with the film than when I was watching Rear Window. And it was a second time watch. Like I knew I already knew
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened, but I was still right there. So yeah, so my 5 through 1 is Lifeboat, Dial In for Murder, Notorious, North by Northwest, and Rear Window. So obviously we had some carryover in each of the sections with just a few films here and there that were separating us, which is somewhat surprising with 15 films that were in as much, I guess, agreement as you could hope for, which is not always how Dan and I see things. So it's
Yeah.
been an interesting journey. So either in reflection of the films that we revealed or just talking about Hitchcock in general, like what are some of your takeaways from the films, from him as a director? Like we always have heard the things that other people attribute to Hitchcock, but what would you attribute to Hitchcock as some of his trademarks and things that you kind of take away from this whole ordeal?
I think I didn't realize how good he was at getting performances out of actors and letting actors do their thing, and putting them in good spots because you could see why so many actors and actresses returned because they do some of their best work with him. And then also, of course, he's known for suspense and everything like that. But also, like, there's a lot of like social commentary I wasn't really aware of within his movies. Like, I think Shadow of a Doubt is a good example of that. But also in a way that he would approach, like, there's a lot of characters that were clearly like homosexuals in a way
Hmm.
that, in a time and place when that was super taboo. And one of them was my best supporting actor award. You see that in Rope as well. And I do wonder like what his movies would have been like under less censorship and things like that. So I think he
Hmm.
even tried to push boundaries in ways that you would not expect for that time, and maybe some ways that still go over people's heads today. So in the sense of like being able to have some representation, you see that a little bit in Lifeboat as well. Not that there isn't things also you can criticize him for too in those areas as well, but and I think he's also like at the center of his films. Ultimately, he just keeps in mind that he's always trying to entertain. He's trying to tell stories, but he's always trying to entertain. He's trying to thrill. And when we talked about a lot of the contemporary reviews of the time, you could see how it was much more mixed. A lot of people weren't as fond of him as we are now, and you can kind of maybe see why, because he would approach the taboo in ways that certainly was probably unappreciated at the time, but now it almost is almost quaint in a way. Only murder. That's it. That's all we have. That's not so bad. But yeah, I'm glad we did this. But what were some of your takeaways?
A couple things. Like I do think number one, I really enjoyed how as a director, and this kind of goes to like what you were saying with getting performances out of people, but I think even to take it a step further, and I've talked about it a couple different times, but he didn't forget about the side characters. The side characters weren't just there to progress the story. Like they're there, but he makes them interesting in and of itself. And I think it's easy for directors to just focus on the leads and pay all their attention to there. And if a side character's there to progress the plot or to add some humor or this, that, and the other, then they're there. But I felt like with Hitchcock, like he really paid attention to the details on these side characters that makes you want to have more information just on their story. Like, and that was evident right from the get-go with the 39 steps. You know, we see the lady with her husband in like the shack that you're like, well, what's the story with these two? And then you see the lady with her husband in the hotel and you're
Yeah.
interested in them. And he does that. Like Rear Window is a prime example. There's all of these characters across that we don't even necessarily have real names for, but we want to know more about their story. What happened before this? You're like, what happens after this? Like, so I thought that was something that he's very like his attention to detail is not just behind the camera from a shot standpoint or from a cinematography type standpoint. Like I feel like his attention to detail was also on every character that appears in his films. Um,
Yeah. He's
so I
really good
thought
at
that was something that stood out.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
He's really good at building those worlds that you like want to be a part of because there's so much going on. Even with like 39 steps, like the living computer, like that was such a kind of
Mhm.
throwaway character, but then how it comes back into play, I thought was really well done. So
Yeah, and I think another thing that we saw, and then we would probably see this even more if we had covered all 50 films, which I'm not suggesting. But if you did, I think he's also someone that was always learning, right? Like he's always reflecting from what he's done, learning about a movie that he's done, and then using that in future movies. Like you see the seeds of certain movies in his early movies, right? Like he even did one where
yeah,
he did the movie twice because of it, basically. Like he does the same movie
yeah,
twice in his filmography. But you got that like from 39 Steps to North by Northwest, or from, you know, you there's a lot of these films that you could connect one to the other and be like, well, here was his initial run, here's his rough draft. And then here's when he actually perfected it and was like in his element. So he wasn't someone that I feel like he wasn't a know-it-all in a way. He was someone that was willing to take chances and willing to do things that other directors weren't, but then also learn from them and perfect them and be like, well, I think I can do that better now. Um, which I thought was interesting. Like, yes, is the Hitchcock blonde thing a thing? Sure. Is some of these other I don't know about the mom thing. Like that's to me like, are you supposed to make 50 films without having a mom in them? Um, you know what I mean? Like I guess you could read into some of that stuff, but I feel like it's more about like what he did with the characters, um, his willingness to experiment. Like yes, these are thriller suspense films overall, but so many of them have a different angle, or you know, some of them have a limited set, a limited cast. Some of them are these rambunctious all over the place, like a North by Northwest or 39 Steps. So like I felt like there's enough variety that even though they all have suspenseful elements for the most part, like it's wrapped up in different wrapping paper every time. So I definitely appreciated that. Other thoughts as far as the journey through these 15 films for you?
you know, like I said, I mean, I think it's worth doing, and if you're thinking about doing it, one of the
Where would you
best parts
start?
too is like I think
If you were telling somebody that had
thir-
watched none of these films, where would you tell them to start?
I do think 39 Steps is a good place to start. It's also available like for free because they lost the rights to it, which is a whole other story. To Catch a Thief, I think is great. I wouldn't start with the big hitters like the
No.
Rear Window or like work up to those, just because you know it lets you see that progression. But I think starting at 39 Steps was a good call because you know it's I think it's Hitchcock becoming like the director we know, but also it's not like his top tier film, in
Right.
my opinion, and in yours as well. So I think that's a good place to go. And then like you know you can go in all different directions, but there's you know I haven't stopped honestly. I just watched as we're doing this yesterday. I finished watching The Man Who Knew Too Much, the remake of it. Speaking of him remaking those
That is
movies,
crazy,
it,
Dan. That's crazy because I literally started it last night as well. I didn't
because
get
it's
very
also
far
like
because I fell asleep, but
yeah, it's off on Netflix. I think on the 31st. So I'm like, all right, well let me watch this before it's off on Netflix. But Netflix does have a lot of the Hitchcock films on there now. I'm not saying we started that or you know we inspired that, but a lot of his movies are there, like The Birds, I think, Vertigo, Rear Window are all on Netflix now.
that's
Yeah,
literally so
and
funny because
then
I was literally laying in bed thinking, I was like, what other Hitchcock films are free that I can just watch? Even though we're not covering it, like what else can I just add to
yeah,
it?
oh, but yeah,
That's
alrighty,
funny. So yeah, I mean, I think it's worth if you have a big blind spot for Hitchcock, like I did kind of going into this. I mean, I'd seen Rear Window and Vertigo, and that was basically it. I would highly suggest taking on a few of these. Like, you don't have to watch all 50 films. You don't even have to watch all 15 films that we covered, but I think you should watch, 8 to 10 of them, like, for sure. And I think, Dan, you're right. 39 Steps, To Catch a Thief are good entry points. I could even see Notorious being like an entry point. But those three kind of set the groundwork, and then you can kind of experience some of the more iconic ones, like you said. But if you haven't seen North by Northwest, Rear Window, Lifeboat, Rebecca, like, you need to watch those films,
Yeah.
at least in my opinion. So I'm very glad that we did this and knocked out some blind spots. And we're gonna keep the train going a little bit with classic films. So I know we've already said it once, but Dan, let the people know what we're doing next.
So as we mentioned a few times, we're going to be kind of shifting and kind of evolving this. We mentioned how we love Cary Grant doing this, and we're going to keep that going. And we're going to be doing a Cary Grant retrospective. And the first one we're going to be getting into is Bringing Out Baby. I think it's available on a number of platforms as well. Be interested to see just what his work is like with different directors and different casts in different genres. And
Yep.
there's plenty of great films to go for him. How many movies have you seen of him besides the Hitchcock films? Have you
Yeah, I was
seen
gonna say. Well,
any?
I've seen 4 Hitchcock films, Dan.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I have seen The Philadelphia Story. I have seen Arsenic and Old Lace, and I have seen. Oh, I feel like there's one more that I'm missing, but I've for sure seen those 2. What about you?
I've seen Arsenic and Old Lace. I watched that actually because we read that play in English class, and then we ended up watching the movie, and then also I saw His Girl Friday. I was in a Billy
Okay.
Wilder kick for a bit, but I'm really excited to rewatch that movie again because, but also that's one that actually has been remade, and it's because it's based upon a play. I could be wrong; it's been a while, but I believe that's been remade, or like the Paper Chase or something like that, with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. And again, that could be completely wrong because it's my memory is awful. But
And
yeah,
we're
that's
still
basically it. Those two films.
okay. So we've both seen a couple of them outside of our 4 Hitchcock films, and we're still solidifying like what all the films are that we'll cover. But we're gonna start with Bringing Up Baby. Like, there's a lot of ones that we could watch. There's Holiday. There's The Philadelphia Story. Like we talked about, Arsenic and Old Lace. There's Charade. There is, oh gosh, what else is there? Oh, Operation Petticoat. I know that one. Fair to remember. So we'll figure it out. If you have one that you think is a must watch, you can go ahead and let us know by commenting at us on social media. The show name is at the Cinema Geeks. Dan, how can people reach out to you?
I'm at Comic Concierge on pretty much all social media platforms.
And you can get a hold of me at Optimus Solo and let me know why I am crazy for not having Vertigo and Psycho in my top 5, as well as letting us know which Cary Grant films we for sure should cover as we kind of make our way through that. I'm excited to do that, and kind of see where that takes us. So that does it for this episode. Tune in next time for another chance to listen to more of the Cinema Geeks.